You know what's crazy? Most of the pressure we feel, the heaviness we carry around, isn't from life itself. It's from all the little things we add on top of it. The mental noise, the inner debates, the constant need to be perfect, liked, or ahead of everyone else. That's what silently burns us out. Not the actual responsibilities, but the invisible baggage we strap to our own backs. Every single day, we overthink every interaction, replay past conversations in our heads, and imagine worst-case scenarios before anything even happens. We say yes when we mean no, because we don't want to be seen as difficult. We try to control how people see us, rather than simply being ourselves. And then we wonder why we're exhausted. Even when we haven't done anything physically demanding, life itself doesn't require half the things we stress over. The world isn't actually demanding perfection from you. That voice in your head, that's not life talking. That's your conditioning. The expectations you absorb from years of comparison, fear, and trying to keep everyone happy. Let's be honest. How much of your energy goes into managing your image? Into trying to seem a certain way, instead of just being? That's the invisible tax you're paying. And you're paying it with your focus, your peace of mind, your sleep, your joy. No wonder life feels like a struggle. You're trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of bricks. The moment you start letting go of this, even just a little, things begin to shift. You start feeling lighter, you breathe easier. The weight on your chest loosens, not because life changed, but because you stopped clenching so hard. You stopped holding on to things that were never yours to carry. And the craziest part, nothing on the outside had to change. You didn't win the lottery. You didn't get a promotion. You simply stopped doing one thing that was draining you more than anything else. So what exactly is that one thing? Most people think that stress comes from having too much to do, but it's usually from trying to do everything while pretending we're not struggling. The truth is, we exhaust ourselves not because life is hard, but because we resist it constantly. We resist discomfort. We resist slowing down. We resist being misunderstood or not looking in control. And all of that silent resistance, it piles up, quietly but powerfully. This is where things subtly start to break. You feel tension in your conversations, but you smile anyway. You feel burnout creeping in, but you push through it. You say you're fine because you don't want to unpack what's really going on. You suppress, you avoid, and you keep running like everything's under control, while your nervous system is screaming for air. The thing that makes life hard, the thing you need to stop, is performing. Not in the artistic sense, but in the emotional sense. Performing strength when you feel weak. Performing calm when you're overwhelmed. Performing like you've got it all together. When you barely slept, your mind is a mess. And your soul's running on fumes. This performance drains you more than any task on your to-do list, because acting like someone you're not, it costs energy. Every mask takes effort to hold in place, and the longer you hold it, the more disconnected you feel from who you actually are, until eventually, you can't tell the difference between the role you're playing and the self you abandoned. But here's what happens when you stop performing. When you drop the act, even just in quiet moments with yourself, you start accessing something rare, clarity. You start saying what you actually think. You start walking away from things that quietly hurt you. You stop doing things just to be liked and start doing things that feel honest. Not because you're trying to be rebellious, just because you're finally done lying to yourself. It's not about becoming careless or cold. It's about no longer sacrificing your mental peace to keep up appearances. And once that shift begins, even the same old routines, work, relationships, daily life, start feeling different, lighter, simpler, less like a performance, and more like something real. And that's when you realize the version of you that was exhausted, overwhelmed, and anxious wasn't really you. It was who you thought you had to be to survive. But you're not here just to survive. You're here to live with depth, clarity, and presence. Think about how often you say yes when your entire body is screaming no. How often you agree just to avoid tension. You answer messages instantly, show up to obligations you didn't want in the first place, and pretend to be okay because it's easier than explaining yourself. Over time, this becomes your second skin. Not because you're weak, but because you've been trained to believe that your worth is directly tied to your usefulness, to how much of yourself you give away. And here's the trap. The more you abandon yourself to keep others comfortable, the more uncomfortable you become. You start shrinking. You start hesitating to take up space. Your intuition gets quieter, your boundaries blur, and your energy, it leaks everywhere, into conversations you didn't want, roles you didn't ask for, and situations that don't align with who you really are. So what happens? Life begins to feel heavier than it should, not because the world changed, but because you gave away the power to decide how you move through it. And the truth is, you can't reclaim your peace if you're still negotiating it with people who benefit from your silence. You can't access your real energy if it's always tied up in keeping others happy. Somewhere along the way, you have to decide that protecting your mental clarity is not selfish, it's sacred. Now here's the deeper part. When you stop apologizing for needing space, when you stop explaining your every decision, something shifts. People either adjust or they exit, and both are forms of alignment. Life gets easier not because fewer things happen, but because fewer of the wrong things get your attention. You stop reacting to everything. You stop picking up every emotional call. You stop letting chaos knock you off center. Instead, you respond only to what resonates. You speak less, but mean more. You move slower, but with intention. And you start choosing peace, not because you're running away from conflict, but because you've stopped running away from yourself. That's not laziness. That's power. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. Most people live in a state of constant resistance, resisting discomfort, resisting silence, even resisting rest. And the strange part is they don't even notice it. Their mind is always scanning for what's next. The next notification, the next task, the next way to prove they're being productive. It's like they're trying to outrun stillness, because stillness feels unfamiliar, too quiet, too honest. But here's the paradox. The very things you're avoiding, boredom, slowness, solitude, are often the doorway to clarity. That moment where your mind isn't filled with noise and something real can finally surface. See, when you're always in motion, you can't hear yourself think. You can't see the patterns you're stuck in because you're too busy doing to even notice them. And this is how people end up exhausted. Not from hard work, but from running in circles. Life starts to change when you stop treating every impulse like a command. When you stop reacting to every thought as if it's urgent or important. Not every itch needs to be scratched. Not every opinion needs to be defended. Not every thought deserves your energy. This is where your power builds, quietly, in the spaces where you pause instead of react, where you sit with discomfort long enough to realize it won't destroy you, where you feel the urge to respond, to fix, to control, and you don't. You begin to learn that peace isn't something you chase. It's something that's revealed when you stop doing everything that disturbs it. And it's not always dramatic. It's not about deleting everyone from your phone or moving to a cabin in the woods. Sometimes it's just not replying right away, or not checking your phone first thing in the morning, or letting someone be wrong about you without defending yourself. It's in the restraint, in the knowing that you don't need to jump into every fire just because it's burning. That's when things get lighter, not because the world changed, but because your attachment to chaos finally loosened its grip. And that's a shift nobody can see, but everyone can feel. There's this moment you eventually reach, a quiet, almost unnoticeable moment, where you realize you don't need to be in every conversation. You don't need to weigh in on every argument. You don't need to make sure everyone sees your side, understands your intentions, or validates your experience. And that moment, it's freedom. Because when you stop doing the mental gymnastics of trying to control how the world sees you, you finally begin to see yourself, not through the distorted lens of outside expectations, but through your own eyes, the ones that have been waiting to reconnect with who you were before you started editing yourself for approval. Most people have no idea how heavy that pressure is until they let it go. The pressure to be impressive, the pressure to be liked, the pressure to meet silent expectations that were never even yours. They carry all this tension in their jaw, in their chest, in their sleep, and call it normal. But once you get a taste of how light life feels when you drop those weights, you can't unfeel it. That's when priorities shift. You no longer chase conversations that drain you. You no longer say yes just to avoid conflict. You stop giving people explanations they didn't earn. And the more you do that, the more your world reorganizes around you. People who truly respect your peace start to show up. The chaos doesn't disappear, but your need to engage with it does. This isn't about isolating yourself or becoming detached. It's about becoming available to what actually feeds you. Real connection, honest rest, creative thought, presence. These things don't survive in the constant storm of overcommitment and fake urgency. When you stop doing what's slowly disconnecting you from yourself, you don't just feel better. You become better. Your focus sharpens. Your conversations deepen. Your standards rise. You become less reactive, more intentional. And people feel it. Even if they can't name it, they sense that something's different about you. You're not rushing, but you're not passive either. You're calm, but alert. Soft, but unshakable. And here's the part that no one tells you. When you stop chasing the life you think you're supposed to have, the life that's actually meant for you starts to come into focus. Not louder, just clearer. You don't realize how much life was weighing you down until you start removing the things you never needed in the first place. The constant overthinking, the unnecessary pressure to always be on, the background fear that if you slow down, you'll fall behind. But fall behind what, exactly? Most people are sprinting in directions they never even chose. They're chasing lives that don't match their values, because somewhere along the way, they confuse movement with progress. But the ones who actually build something real, something peaceful, meaningful, sustainable, aren't the ones chasing everything. They're the ones who've learned to edit. They trim the noise, they set quiet boundaries, they pause before reacting, and they understand something that sounds almost rebellious in today's world. You don't have to do more to feel more alive. You just have to stop doing what keeps disconnecting you. Because every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you scroll mindlessly instead of resting intentionally, every time you perform instead of express, you chip away at your clarity. And clarity is what makes life feel easier. Not because the path is smooth, but because you finally see it. When you stop doing the things that sabotage your peace, something incredible happens. You begin to trust yourself again. You start making decisions faster. You stop explaining them. You take better care of your energy. You stop feeding conversations that leave you drained. And you stop arguing with reality, trying to make it softer for everyone but yourself. And the more you operate from this space, this calm, focused, uncluttered space, the more you realize life was never meant to be this exhausting. You were just never taught how to let go. So here's your reminder. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to chase what's running. You don't have to explain what's already been felt. You just have to stop doing what keeps you heavy. Let life feel lighter, not by force, but by choice. And if this message hits you at the right time, then you already know it's time to stop carrying what was never yours. If that resonated, make sure you subscribe, drop a like, and share this with someone else who's been carrying too much. Your peace is your power. Don't trade it.